Hi, and welcome to Quick Tip Tuesday with Applied Behaviour Solutions. Memory is something that I think we all wish we could work on and improve. But while you may be wishing for a better memory, most of us take for granted how automatic most of our memory skills actually are. So let's look at a few examples. Running a bath and remembering to close the taps after a couple of minutes. Placing food in the oven and checking on it every so often or at a time that you know it should come out. Filling up your tank when the light goes on so that you don't run out of petrol on your way to the office. Getting to the shops and having your purse with you with all the relevant cards that allow you to pay and scan your points. These are all things that our working memory helps us with on a daily basis. If you have ever wondered what you can do to increase your kiddos' working memory, then you're in the right place. So today we're looking at working memory. Right, so what I would like you to do is focus on the images here in this specific sequence. I'm going to ask you about them a bit later, but no writing them down and no taking photos because that's cheating. So today I'm going to give you 5 research-based tips that you can use to help your child. These tips are helpful for all children, typically developing learning differences, developmental delays, and it can be applied academically and outside of academic learning. P.S. These tips work for adults too, so go ahead and use them on yourself. So my name is Robin. I am a co-founder and a director at Applied Behaviour Solutions. We work with children who have a variety of specialized and unique support needs. And we specialize in childhood development, and our behavior analytics services include reducing challenging behavior, reaching developmental milestones, acquiring foundational academic skills, facilitation, as well as school readiness support. Today is episode 10 of Quick Tip Tuesday, which feels like a little bit of a milestone. It's been really great being able to help support parents and teachers with these quick and informative episodes designed to give you information that you can start using today. After watching this episode, you are going to know more about working memory, why it's so important, what to look out for, and things that you can do to help improve this critical skill in your kiddos. I'm quite excited about this topic. It may run a little bit longer than our usual ones, but not by too much. But it really is jam-packed with research-based information and filled with things that you can use going forward. Because it's our 10th episode, I'm going to throw in 2 quick extra tips for learning right now. Okay, so number 1. Research has shown that doodling while learning helps keep us on track and actually improves our retention for information. Number 2, learning right before bedtime has also been proven to be the most effective time to remember new information. All right, so I'd like you to think back to the sign now. Does anybody remember the sequence of pictures that I showed you? Okay, so if you want to, you can give us a thumbs up if you did remember. Most adults, it's quite typical that most adults, and it was quite a simple one. I'm having to actually look now. Flower, triangle, heart, star. And so most adults are able to recall 4 digits for items of information. What I want you to do, even if you didn't remember, I want you to think about the processes that you used to try and keep hold of that information while I was still talking to you. And I'd like you to see if any of those come up within our tips. So if you didn't remember, don't worry. What probably happened was you were listening to what I was saying, and so the symbols slipped out of your working memory and you weren't able to commit it to your long-term memory to recall it later on. so let's get started with what working memory is. Working memory is a smaller part of a larger system known as executive functioning. Think of it as your active memory. It's the memory that you use when you engage with something. So, for example, when you're listening and you are having a conversation, you're using your working memory. And okay, so if you touch your forehead, so this part of your brain is called your prefrontal cortex, and that's the home of working memory. So when you're having your conversation, this part of your brain is active. It's drawing on information from your long-term memory. So if somebody's asking you, or not asking you, talking to you about their wedding, your working memory is going back into your long-term memory, and it's thinking, oh, weddings, cake, there's usually a big cake. People are dancing. We sit down and we eat something really nice, and people say speeches. And then what happens is it brings it out into the conversation. So then you may say something like, what kind of cake did you have? Did you have a band play at your wedding for your first dance? Did you say a speech? Did someone else say a speech? So that's your working memory, right? Putting together all of the pieces from what you're hearing, so incoming information, with knowledge that you have already stored. And it's a really critical skill that we need, not just in everyday life, but in the classroom as well. So when your teacher is talking or you are learning new words, that's your working memory coming into play to actively join our knowledge with this new information. So for a classroom example, I'd like you to think about a teacher standing in front of the class, and she's asking them to write down, the cat is jumping up the tree away from the fox. Right, so now what do kids need to do? They need to keep that whole sentence in their working memory while they are writing. They may need to concentrate on sounding out the words for tree, or the letters or the sounds for tree. And while they are busy writing this word and thinking about how to write it, the rest of the sentence may have already disappeared. Working memory is one part of executive functioning. Other parts involve impulse and emotional control, flexibility, planning, prioritizing, problem solving, attention, metacognition, and other memory systems. These parts don't work in isolation. They are all interlinked. So kids with poor working memory may struggle with these other areas of executive functioning too. When a child has poor working memory, it's very difficult for them to remember more than one step at a time. The problem is then compounded because when kids can't remember the task, they tend to become fidgety and distracted. And it's easy to think that the child is not concentrating, that they aren't interested, or that they are even being purposefully disruptive or off task. But in reality, what's happening is they just can't hold on to the information that they need in their working memory. Poor working memory is often also linked to poor academic performance over long term and an inability to stay focused in the classroom. In fact, working memory has started being looked at as a more important component than IQ in determining future academic success. One research article found that having poor working memory puts a child at as much risk academically as being ADHD. But the ADHD child can sometimes qualify for additional learning aids in the classroom, whereas the child with poor working memory most likely isn't. It's worth considering that we have what we call cool decision making, such as when we are sorting cards into shapes and colors. And this accesses a different part of the frontal cortex than hot or emotional decision making when there is something at stake. It's good to be aware of the fact that emotional content can change the way your child is able to reason things out. And it would suggest that when you are looking at instances, when you're looking at like if you're trying to figure out if a kid does have some issues from an executive functioning side, what you want to do is you want to look at situations that don't involve emotional situations. Also important to remember is that our kids are still learning these skills. It's not meant to be solidified and at the level as an adult when they're younger. These skills continue to develop well into the late teens and even early adulthood in some cases for some of the functions. Having said that, here are some signs that you can look out for if you are concerned that your child may have poor working memory. 1. Poor academic progress. So poor academic progress. Number 2, difficulty in following instructions that have multiple steps. 3, a failure to complete common tasks that require information to be held in their mind. 4 is an inability to know where they are up to in a complex task, such as writing or doing a math problem, trying to comprehend what they're reading. So they may get partway in a task, then suddenly they can't remember where they are. They're not sure how to move forward, and they just seem super confused. And then number 5 is a high level of inattentive and distractible behavior. Alright, so before we start with the tips, I'm going to be mentioning quite a lot of research during today's episode, and if you are interested in learning more, please feel free to pop a message in the comments section and I will send you the references. Alright, tip number 1, play games. If you're a parent, then you have asked yourself time and time again, if I get an educational app on my iPad, does it count as learning or is it just another game? The answer is yes, it definitely counts as learning. The only catch to this is that researchers found that while the gains that children show, which is typically 3 to 4 times higher in working memory tasks, it doesn't seem to help people perform better in these areas, like reading or mathematics. What does this mean for you? If you want your child to transfer these skills, you should rather spend some time searching for specific apps or games that are going to help them in the future. So if your kiddo struggles with mathematic targets, like look for skills that work on counting, number sense, patterning, basic arithmetic. If your kiddo is struggling with reading, look for programs that are designed for kids who need to build literacy skills. If you'd like some more ideas for games that you can play with your child, we've made a post on this. Check out your Instagram and Facebook page. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to comment. Sorry, let's see, comments. Oh, there you go. I'm going to post the links to our Facebook and then our Instagram pages that will direct you to this post that I'm referring to. So these aren't computer games. These are actual physical games that you can play that are quite fun activities that you can do physically with your kid to help with their learning skills. There you go, there are both in. Right, tip number 2 is sleep. It's no surprise that our performance on working memory tasks would deteriorate when we're tired or sleepy. If we are physically uncomfortable, it's a distraction. Experiments show that 1 night of sleep deprivation results in immediate impairment in working memory. What's even more interesting and somewhat disturbing is the idea that chronic sleep troubles might actually interfere with the development of your working memory capacity. Now, I know that sleep is a very sensitive and difficult subject for a lot of parents out there, so I don't give this tip lightly. I know that it's not as simple as telling your kiddo to go to bed a bit earlier, but it is something to consider and perhaps worth looking at getting some support in this area if needed. You are welcome to send us a message if you need more support in this area. It is something that we can help with. Right, tip number 3, encourage verbal rehearsal. Think about what happens when you need to pop to the shops for a couple of items and choose to rely on your memory instead of a list. You keep it in the front of your mind by repeating the information back to yourself until you've committed it to memory. You might say the items out loud, or you may repeat the items silently in your head. Either way, you're talking to yourself, and that repetition is called verbal rehearsal. Rehearsal is essential for some working memory tasks, and kids discover its value quite early on in life. You may often hear young children talking to themselves in ways that help them stay on task. And they may use verbal rehearsal to keep information active in their working memory. Yet, our kiddos don't always take full advantage of this strategy, which might explain some individual variance. Researchers have found that among 5 and 6-year-olds, the use of self-regulatory speech is linked with better problem solving. Research also shows that children who are asked to suppress their self-regulatory speech perform worse than children who are encouraged to make use of verbal rehearsal. I'd like you to think for a second about this application in real life. In school, we teach our kids to work quietly so as not to disturb the rest of the class. Perhaps if we can encourage our kids a little bit more to use their voices, they may perform better. It's not always easy at school, I do appreciate, and I know that especially the older kids get, you can't have every kid talking out loud, but at home, try and encourage your child to do this while they are completing their homework or studying for a test. Right, tip number 4, encourage your kiddo to talk with their hands and move around. This tip is fantastic for me. I do it all the time. I've been doing it throughout the video and I've been very aware of it. A lot of us find it natural to move and gesture as we speak. There have actually been quite a lot of research studies that show that gestures help us learn and recall information. And it also appears to help people struggling with working memory limitations. We know from research that gestures help adults stay on task as well as improve their abilities with certain working memory tasks. Does the same apply for children? The simple answer is yes. Children who gestured more during working memory tasks performed better, and other studies have found that children learn more readily when performing relative gestures during a lesson. What's even better is that our kids don't only benefit when performing the gestures themselves, they also learn better when the person that they're learning from includes relevant gestures in their speech. So next time you're talking to your kids, feel free to gesture. They probably will remember it better. Research has also found that children who move while learning remembered and performed much better in subjects like math and spelling. And this makes sense, right? Because when we are moving, we're getting our blood moving and your blood is going up to the front of our head. Remember, we spoke about the prefrontal cortex, which allows your working memory to work even better when we are learning. Again, the implications in real life. I know for the lower grades, it's quite common to have movement breaks and brain gym exercises early in the morning, but this is something that should be carried over no matter what age the kid is in schools, movement breaks, being allowed to excuse yourself from the classroom to walk around, or even in the classroom, go stand at the back of the class if it's going to maybe disturb the rest of the class, and do something that's going to get your blood moving again. If you can start your family's day with a brief 16 minutes, 16, not 60, of physical activity like a workout routine or running, research has proven that this can improve your working memory up to 20%, which is quite drastic. And the effects can help keep you going all the way up until the afternoon. Okay, so our last tip for today is general knowledge. Never stop learning. Nobody has an objectively large working memory capacity. I mean, in experiments, adults can keep only a few distinct pieces of information in focus at once, and for children, it's even less. The good news is that increasing your general knowledge and background knowledge reduces demands on working memory when we do daily tasks. Right, so I'm going to give this a test right now. I'm going to briefly flash a sequence of 12 apparently random numbers to you, and if I asked you to repeat them back, you would find it very difficult, if not impossible. So this number, for instance, 15836241136. Right, really tricky. But put it into chunks. 158, 362. 411, 376. Seems a little bit easier now, right? Or if I gave you 9 random letters. SIAFIPTOR. But notice how much easier it is when the letters aren't random, but instead a series of meaningful acronyms. SIA, FIP, TOR. You're more likely to remember that in like 2 or 3 minutes when I ask you again. Your underlying working memory capacity hasn't expanded, but your performance has. Your prior knowledge and experience with things like mnemonics and grouping help you compress many different units of information into fewer, more meaningful chunks. So, background knowledge can help you remember a sequence of letters and numbers, but what else can it do? If your kiddo has prior knowledge on the topic that they are reading, then it means that they don't have to rely so heavily on their working memory to keep all of this information in the front. It's already committed and stored to their long-term memory. So this frees them up to process more complex sentence structures instead, which helps improve their reading skills. Improvements of your kiddo's working memory is also positively correlated to their time spent in school, not because they are getting older, but because they are learning things that help them organize, chunk, and encode information. One key reason why kids perform more poorly on working memory tasks is because they lack background information. A really interesting study that they did on adults was they created working memory tasks that virtually eliminated the possibility of prior knowledge. And what they found was that adult working memory performance was reduced to what we observe in children. Having more general knowledge gives you an advantage. It is a powerful argument for cranking up your curiosity and learning more about the world. Being an avid reader, a consumer of interesting facts, a collector of new vocabulary may pay off in ways that go beyond the accumulation of information that is stored into your long-term memory. It may actually help your kiddo repackage incoming data, freeing up crucial working memory resources. They will be left with more working memory to think and solve problems with. By helping kids discover intellectual passions and soak up new information, we are actually laying down the groundwork for long-term improvements of working memory performance. Before we go, I'd like to ask you to take a few minutes to like, comment, and share our videos so that we can reach more parents out there who need our help. That's us done. Thank you so much for watching today's episode of Quick Tip Tuesday. If you have any questions, please feel free to message us. And don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and now YouTube to watch this and other episodes. Thanks, everybody. Keep well.